strike at the heart of the drone war. How Ukrainian MiG-29 destroyed a Shahed 136 incubator factory. The Russian-Ukrainian war has long ceased to resemble a classic clash of armies. It's a war of intellect, ingenuity, and unexpected solutions. It's also a war of ideas. On this battlefield, kamikaze drones operate alongside Cold War-era tanks. Here, naval drones with a displacement of barely 1 ton force cruisers and landing ships weighing tens of thousands of tons to retreat. Ukrainian soldiers and engineers assemble drone guidance systems out of hunting scopes. This list could go on, but the story we tell today is different. It's about an air raid in which an old Soviet MiG-29 fighter jet was turned into a precision weapon of the 21st century, capable of destroying even the most heavily protected facilities. 2:30 p.m. local time. At a military airfield, a pilot slowly climbs the ladder into his MiG-29. At first glance, it looks like an ordinary late 1980s aircraft. Faded pixel camouflage, a cockpit with bulky analog gauges, heavy mechanical control levers. But a closer look reveals something unusual under the wings. Not Soviet missiles, but 4 American GBU-39 bombs. Small, yet deadly. Each carrying 200 pounds, or about 90 kilograms of powerful explosives, with a range of 70 miles, or 110 kilometers, and an accuracy of between 15 to 20 feet, or about 5 to 8 meters. Inside the cockpit, wedged between the old control panel and burnout lamp indicators and ordinary iPads taped in place, on it runs software developed by Ukrainian engineers that transmits the aircraft's GPS coordinates to the electronic brains of the bombs, since the 40-year-old jet has no interface capable of doing so. When it was designed, the acronym GPS did not even exist. The entire system's like a Frankenstein of steel, wires, and code. But that doesn't matter. What matters is that it works. In fact, it borders on the surreal. A Soviet airframe, an American bomb, Ukrainian software. Unlike a Salvador Dali painting, though, this is reality. An impossible reality in which engineers have taught a 40-year-old aircraft to work with weapons its designers could never have imagined. The target lies more than 200 miles, about 350 kilometers from the front line. At this plant, some 40 Shahed 136 drones are produced every week. These are the same drones that buzz over Odessa, Dnipro, and Kyiv at night, and in the morning leave behind black craters where apartment buildings once stood. The path to the target runs through a multi-layered air defense network. S-300s, S-400s, mobile TOR systems, and electronic warfare units that jam everything linked to GPS. The Russian Krasuka 4 complex at the site itself floods the airwaves with half a kilowatt of interference, turning satellite signals into pure static. At first glance, such a mission seems like suicide for a Ukrainian pilot, but that's only how it looks from the outside. Remember when in 2012, Felix Baumgartner rose in a stratospheric balloon nearly to the edge of space, more than 130,000 feet or 39 kilometers, and stepped into the void? Millions of viewers watching held their breath, thinking he was a madman playing with death. But behind that jump stood more than steel nerves. It was backed by meticulous engineering, years of preparation, hundreds of test ascents, precise calculations of the entry angle into denser layers of the atmosphere, and the work of dozens of specialists in aerodynamics, medicine, and safety systems. This flight was much the same. On the outside, it looked like a daring breakthrough into a dense air defense zone. On the inside, it was painstaking and cold military mathematics. For weeks, reconnaissance refined every waypoint, searching for the single dead corridor between radar coverage zones. Electronic warfare units synchronized the timing of jamming signals and the creation of decoys. Strike aircraft distracted the enemy from another direction. It was a carefully planned, rehearsed symphony in which the pilot performed the solo part. But the orchestra, a whole network of specialists and units, played in unison with him. At 2:51 p.m., the MiG lifts off from the runway. Almost immediately, it drops to an altitude of just a few dozen feet. Fields and villages flash beneath it, and power line towers pass barely yards from the canopy. Every extra foot higher is another chance to appear on the radar screen. So the pilot flies as if along the edge of a knife. A little lower, and the wings would scrape the ground. A little higher, and missiles would already be on their way. 20 minutes later, he enters a narrow corridor between the coverage zones of 2 S-300 batteries. This is the dead space calculated by Ukrainian intelligence. Here, the terrain and physics make the aircraft invisible to long-range radar, but a mistake of even a mile would put him inside the kill zone, either to the left or to the right. The second hand on the cockpit clock ticks mercilessly forward. The next stage of the operation is approaching. At 3:22 p.m., the pilot suddenly pulls back on the stick. The MiG climbs sharply to 15,000 feet, about 4,500 meters. This altitude will allow the bombs to glide for several more dozen miles on their small wings before slamming into the target. Those 15,000 feet are not random. Climb lower and the aircraft would have to get closer to the target to ensure the bombs reach it, which would increase the risk of being destroyed by Russian air defenses. Climb higher and the bombs could be released from farther away, but the chance of being detected and shot down would rise dramatically. 15,000 feet is the golden middle for this mission. Even so, it proves dangerous. Suddenly, a siren screams inside the cockpit. A Russian TOR air defense radar has picked up the Ukrainian MiG. Time now accelerates into a sprint. The pilot has about 90 seconds before he enters a zone where missiles can reach him in just 24 seconds. But the timing has been perfectly chosen. 45 minutes earlier, Ukrainian Su-24 bombers launched AGM-88 HARM missiles at several Russian radars. These missiles are designed specifically to destroy radar stations, homing in on their emissions. As a result, part of the radar network was temporarily disabled, or the operators shut them down to avoid being hit. Meanwhile, Ukrainian electronic warfare units generated false signals for Russian radar systems. On enemy screens, they looked like a formation of strike aircraft approaching from another direction. This diversion drew attention and forced part of the Russian defenses to engage a phantom attack. The real MiG-29 faced only a fraction of the missiles that could have been sent against it. At 3:28 p.m., the locks on his pylons release. The first GBU-39 drops away, followed by 3 more. Within 3 seconds, each one unfolds its thin wings and transforms from a falling weight into a gliding hunter. Their flight paths are calculated to approach the target from different directions and strike at 30-second intervals. Their navigation is guided by GPS, an inertial system, and internal sensors. Every second, the course is corrected dozens of times. Somewhere beyond the horizon, the conveyor of death is working non-stop, stamping out shaheads. In just a few minutes, that assembly line will stop. A Ukrainian hand will throw the switch. Meanwhile, 2 missiles from a Russian Tor system are chasing the MiG. The distance between them is shrinking rapidly. After all, 3 times the speed of sound against just over Mach 1.2 is a hopeless race, but a steep dive saves the fighter as it drops behind the folds of the terrain. The missiles overshoot and self-destruct seconds later. The bombs, however, continue on their course, pushing through the electronic interference. Built-in anti-jamming protection in the American weapons holds firm. The winged killers keep closing in on their target. At 3:32 p.m., the first bomb finds the roof of the assembly shop, which glows differently in the infrared spectrum than everything around it. The angle of attack, algorithmic correction, and then 200 pounds of explosives punch through concrete and steel. The shop where drone fuselages were being built collapses into rubble. 30 seconds later, the second GBU-39 slams into the neighboring building. This is where the electronics, the brains of the drones, are assembled. The explosion wipes out everything: circuit boards, computers, equipment. Without them, the finished airframes are nothing more than empty shells. Another 30 seconds pass, and the third bomb hits the warehouse where 15 to 20 completed Shahed 136 drones were stored, each fitted with a 100-pound or roughly 45-kilogram warhead. The detonation turns the entire building into a massive fireball, sending the remaining drones and every spare part up in the sky. The fourth bomb finishes off whatever's left standing. The Ukrainian MiG races back home. 2 pairs of Russian Su-35s take off to intercept, but once again, the Ukrainian pilot has mathematics on his side. It'll take the Russian fighters 8 minutes to catch up, while he needs only 6 minutes to reach the protective umbrella of his own air defenses. Later analysis will confirm that all 4 bombs struck their targets with a margin of error no greater than 20 feet, or about 7 meters, despite the intense GPS jamming. Ukraine proved that even an aging aircraft can be transformed into a formidable weapon if it's brought back to life properly, even if that means using a tablet computer, improvised adapters, and software coded almost by hand in field conditions. This was not just a strike against a factory, it was a demonstration that in this war, what matters most is not the number of missiles, but the ability to overcome any limitation. It showed that the determination of a handful of people with fire in their eyes can turn relics of the past into weapons of the future. The Ukrainians are fighting with desperation and resolve. 1 old MiG-29, 4 American bombs, 1 ordinary iPad, and 1 Ukrainian pilot delivered a strike that Russia felt painfully. Looking at operations like this, it becomes even clearer that the key to any war is not the weapons themselves, but the people behind them. Their willingness to fight and, if necessary, to die for ideals that any decent person understands. Ideals of freedom and independence. Weapons can be bought. Determination cannot. You either have it or you do not. What do you think? Share your thoughts in the comments. Thank you for watching. We greatly appreciate a like and a subscription to our channel. See you again soon.